All right, greetings everybody, and today we are going to be finally doing what is a little bit of an initial judgment slash final judgment on Shadowynx, because I've let this slip for a little bit long just because being behind on a bunch of other stuff and just real world stuff, and sometimes that takes away. That's okay, because we're going to do it now right before she comes out on global. Isn't that amazing? All right, so taking a look at Shadowynx. Shadowynx new version is a water archer character. For those who have forgotten, definitely go check out the data review video. If you have any questions, essentially she is kind of a low 70 cost version of Bridal Alaya, with means that essentially she can reduce her movement and increase her range, and that was very strong with Bridal Alaya, and one would expect it to be quite strong here. She also has reflex, she has a bunch of stuff in her kit that is pretty darn good, and I ended up liking quite a bit, which is why I think when she came out, she was a recommendation for me. And today we're going to be testing her against one of the strongest win parties, and sorry for the kind of makeshiftness of this party. Obviously, this isn't the most ideal that we could do, but we're looking essentially at not really the greatest of water friend units. Like, we can do some different stuff, but as you can see on JP, a lot of this is you know, less than ideal. So we'll go with this. I think it's generally pretty fair because my wind units aren't necessarily also the best. They don't necessarily have the best VCs supporting them. And yeah, I keep in mind that for our Shadowynx here, we have got her up to 115. You can see a general idea of what her stats look like, as well as her resistances. They're nothing too terribly amazing, but for the most part, I want to get across that I think this unit is primarily for just limited cost stuff. You can make pretty neat teams with Earth and Ice especially, because obviously Ice has a bunch of range units. Put them together, put, you know, Eliza in combination with this girl, in combination with like a good tank to protect them, and boom, Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. You have an absolutely fantastic low cost team that is killing the enemy long before they get to you, potentially. So we have the setup. Again, apologies not being able to get to 120, but there is a limited amount of resources, and obviously with the announcement of lightning coming back, that is going to hurt Shadowynx a fair bit, because while you're not always necessarily going up, you're just not going up against lightning with a water-based team ever right now. I think that there's going to be so many lightning teams, and wind is quite a strong team too, and that's why we're kind of putting them up against wind, because Dario is potentially a force to be reckoned with, and I do want to test it out and see. So let's get into it without any further ado. Just a reminder, she has select for target, she has dispel, she has nullify, you know, damage bonuses. You can do quite a few nice things that I think are really, really cool. But overall, this unit probably is feeling, as I said just a little bit earlier, a little bad for how many lightning buffs lightning as an element is going to get. And just for the fact that wind also has kind of taken its place as being incredibly powerful right now. Even potentially more powerful than some people would, like myself, would expect. And that's without Fang showing up. So if Fang ends up being just really good, water is a strong element, but it's going to have a little bit of an uphill. So you can see the basic attack here. Without running anything extra, we can try a few attacks here. We've already run a few various buffs as well to get an idea for what we've got going. You can see some of the triple shots, roughly how much damage they are doing with resistances and everything. And here we have her large AoE, which, as you can see, suffers for damage, but again, not fully yet fully upgraded. She does get a fair bit more power, finishing off her EX and getting into her 140, which bring up here. Dream gets AoE resistance, gets reaction block, but getting the extra nodes, the extra stats and everything will push her power higher. So let's get, just start buffing here. Starting off with an increased water attack as well as increasing physical base and magical resistance, and to test out how much her resistance is going up. So you can see not exactly the most amount of abilities. We only have 2 to cast. We're going to cast this one first to see what our opponents can do to us. Next up, Dario. And really quick, showing off what Dario looks like, even at a 115. Quite ferocious stats, 46 defense, 26 spirit, and 26 single target with 44 AoE without having him anywhere near his max, and still a positive rating on shooting means that he is potentially still pretty good here. And speaking of good, we're got these abilities here. We love these abilities that end up just boosting just a bunch of stuff. And this ability I want to draw just a little bit of attention to. It is elemental resistance against 3 different elements. Pretty nice. Not water though, so that is not going to be a factor. Here we go. Tons of things activated, including elemental chain resistance. Get Preen doing her stuff. And Summer Glassy doing hers. So yeah, one thing about this is just when we're talking about this new character, it is a little disconcerting that we did effectively, like some of her abilities focus more towards defense. If we go over here and just test Wind Veritas, who again is about a 120, you can see that he is doing a good amount of damage without too terribly much effort. If we go over here, just testing out on some other characters, see that Dario is, and also Wind Glassy is also quite defensive too. Try a few other abilities on her to see how much damage we can potentially get. Shadowynx does have a little bit of benefit of just being not up front and not necessarily highest priority target, but could end up getting there pretty quickly. So there's a general look at the damage for this non-140 unit. We'll do a little bit of a buff here and jump over to the next unit. We'll also try just a few of our water units too to see how she can do in the matchup. As you can see, different abilities such as strike type damage here. We're looking at about half of her HP potentially being gone. Potentially maybe even a little. There's that. Have to wait, sit through a few animations. And now testing out Dario's abilities, who, while Dario is not a mega powerhouse currently with Wind is really relying on a lot of the physical spear to do most of the damage, leaving Dario in kind of a little bit of a weaker, but he is playing the defensive role. We can get an idea for what light magic-based damage would do against Shadowynx, as well as percent chances of status effects and whatnot. So not terribly too high of damage, but it does wear down on her. Cast another buff, get some more AP, why not? And now we have Shadowynx here. So the other ability that we have is this one gives single target resistance of 20, critical damage of 20 for allies. Following effect decreases pain resistance and restores 15 AP. Oh, so it does a lot. And the nice thing about the buff is that it is a pretty big AoE, so she can activate it from a little bit further away than some that require the ally to be right up. So shoot off this limit burst, not too terribly much, but if I remember correctly, our limit burst isn't super powered, so we'll test a few other skills here. As you can see, damage reduction does go a long way against this unit. And again, we get that She is missing her job level 25 ability, which would be nice for debuffing and dispelling some stuff on targets, especially, for instance, haste on Wind Veritas here, but not super great. In terms of reducing elemental chain resistance, it's also a little bit worrying that, like, for instance, the most damage she's doing here is against Dario. Of course, Fly Glassy, one of the characters that does have a barrier, so you kind of would want a little bit of a barrier breaker here, and you're just not necessarily getting it off of her main job. She has a lot of interesting support for herself, the new version of Shadowynx, but overall I feel that, at least for now, it doesn't feel super strong with all of the different characters that are out there. It feels like maybe he's not quite there yet. I mean, we can run all the buffs and everything, but we can make the excuse that we're not fully leveled, but even some of these characters are not fully leveled, and you can still see that her performance is good, but not quite good enough. And this makes me feel that just essentially you do kind of need another unit to really bring out the power. And again, you don't want to be fighting like this, a 300 cost team with some of the strongest characters out there, because she falls more than a little bit. And then just bringing Preen in here, even hacking some of these characters, you can see, I mean, we've got through effectively the barrier for this character. We have a little bit of that more offensive power here, but as you can see, it feels generally not the best, because then we can just have like Fly Glassy here just come in and deal some damage. So where do I stand on Shadowynx? She's a cool unit. I love her design, as always, as a player who just loves water characters. Always inclined to give just a little bit more support. Range is generally good, but where Shadowynx falls, I generally feel like she is a really potentially good low-cost character for those cost-limited events where you're going to want to be trying to save as much as you can. You can throw her with a bunch of different units. You could go full offensive, full beef, you know, hide her behind a tank, and she can get some really good utility in there. And as always, bow characters I just like way more than gunners. But yeah, Kitane is another character who came out recently in a very similar spot, but for the dark element. And a lot of people put it succinctly that Shadowynx feels less impressive than the new version of Kitane, for essentially the same cost for two units that came out relatively close. And the other thing to remember here is that Kitane, her ninja version, her another story version, hasn't really made the cut either for just regular content. And I think that is kind of the point to end on when it comes to her. Shadowynx will do you favors in certain stuff, for sure. And there will be times when she is just naturally a better unit to choose than other units. But as such, I think you could probably save your resources, and Lightning will probably be an overall better, like, bang for your limited amount. Anyway, so that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Of course, I don't expect this to be the greatest showing of this character. I think that some teams could probably do a little bit better, but just to give a general show off of what she's kind of like, I feel that this is a pretty fair showing. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. Take care. See you later.